Hola! So today we're going to look at the diary entry in the Living Certificate paper. We're going to focus on the high level, although as we will be talking about later, the differences between a high level and ordinary are not very big. So we're going to focus on the vocabulary and the structure of the high level, okay? As we know, it's one of the options that we have in the written task at the end of the exam. So we can pick between a diary entry or a note. It is worth 20 marks. Although this year I would say will change because of, the structure of the test, and I'm not quite sure what's gonna happen, but it might be worth more. It should take about 20 to 25 minutes to write it, because it's not as long as other parts of the test. Like I mentioned before, the ordinary and the higher level are not too different. It's just the content of, it's just what the student writes, but the content is not very, very different because they cover more or less the same topics. And like the opinion piece, the tenses and the agreement are key in order to gain higher marks. So normally the diary entry will have a combination of present, past, future. You might be able to include a subjunctive as well. And basically the agreement that everything has its masculine, feminine, singular and plural. The diary entry tends to be a very informal situation because you're writing on your diary. So you shouldn't need to use the usted form in here. What topics could you find? For example, you're going to Spain, or you're staying with a Spanish family, or maybe your plans for the summer, or your plans for next weekend, or what you did last summer, or an accident that happened last summer. Basically all those topics that tend to be very informal. Now, let's talk about vocabulary. We're going to see some phrases that might be useful in order to gain higher marks. And also let's look at the spelling. So the first one is how to start. So on the bottom right, we need to include the date, okay? And then after that, on the left, we have to include querido diario. Now, querido, be careful with the spelling because I know that it can be tricky because of the amount of E's and A's and I's that are in both words. So, querido diario. And then we put colon. We don't put a comma in Spanish, we put a colon. This is something that some teachers in some schools don't explain, so it's worth knowing, okay? Then you could start with something like estoy escribiendo estas líneas en la cama, vaya día he tenido, estoy agotada o agotado. Here comes the agreement, depending on who's talking or who's writing. Estoy hecho polvo o estoy hecha polvo. Tengo muchas ganas de, ¿vale? There's another one that is a bit different in Spanish and in English. It's when you say, for example, if your topic is about you've arrived in Spain and you're talking about the family you're staying with, or those type of topics, and you can use this called when in English we say I have just arrived. In English we use a past tense, a very recent past tense, but in Spanish we use a present, and we use this verb acabar de, and then a verb in infinitive. Now that verb acabar needs to agree with the person. Normally it would be me, so acabo de, in present tense. You don't need to worry about putting that in past or perfecto or anything like that. So just acabo de, and then a verb in infinitive, which is I have just, for example, acabo de llegar, I have just arrived. And then you can use some phrases, for example, lo paso bomba or lo pasé bomba, which means I have a good time, or I had a good time. And then if you want to conclude, after writing the whole diary entry, you want to conclude the entry, you can use things like mañana será otro día, tengo que irme, nada más por ahora, o hasta mañana, hasta luego, and then you sign. As you can see, this shouldn't take you longer than probably 20 or 25 minutes. Even though you are given 5 points, they expect you to, to develop those points a bit longer. So not just saying, for example, if you say, oh, you're staying with a Spanish family, and you say, oh, I'm staying with a Spanish family, stop. No, you can say things such as, I'm staying with a family, they're cold, they live, the house is situated in, we have these rooms. I mean, make use of all the vocabulary that you know. And the same with other points. Anyways, don't worry about that, because in the next video we're going to nearly drop this. We're going to create a video, or okay. In the next video, we're going to look at one example of a diary entry, and we will be covering tenses, agreement, all the phrases that we have looked at today, and the structure in general. So stay tuned, and I'll see you next one. Adios.